Good evening. May I ask the selectmen candidates to please take their seats up here, the selectmen? Yeah. We're getting some water for you. It'll be up here in a moment. Good evening, and welcome to the annual Candidates Night sponsored by the Chelmsford Business Association. My name is Doug Hausler. I'm the moderator for this evening's program, and I'm pleased to be able to serve in that role for, I think it's year 25. We are broadcasting live this evening from the Chelmsford Radisson Hotel at 10 Independence Drive. First and foremost, the Business Association wants to thank Chelmsford Telemedia for all of its efforts to make this production possible. We also like to thank our guests, the candidates, both for school committee and for the selectmen, as well as the press, and of course our viewers, both those present and at home, for participating in our program. Tonight we're going to have two separate segments for our program. We will have the three candidates seeking election to the two available positions on the Board of Selectmen. And then we will have the candidates after an intermission, of course. We'll have a chance for the candidates for school committee. There are two candidates seeking the one open seat. The format for tonight's program is substantially the same as we've used throughout many years. Each candidate has provided us with a short biographical introduction that I will be reading. And after those introductions, we will begin asking questions of the candidates. Each candidate has been told, and we remind them again, that they will have up to 1 minute to respond to each question. The candidates will be asked questions that were prepared in advance of tonight's program by the Candidates Night Committee of the Chelmsford Business Association, and also from input that we have received from the general public and our regular members. And we will also have questions from the press, as we anticipate that that's solely in the discretion of the press. Questions that were submitted in advance by non-committee members were reviewed by the committee before being asked. If, while you're here this evening, for those in attendance, you have a question that you'd like to have asked, please write it down on a piece of paper that's on the tables and bring it to the table in the front here so we can review those and see if we have the time to ask those questions. At the end of each program, we will have the candidate make a closing statement, which will not be allowed to exceed 1 minute. As the moderator, I've been given the discretion power to interrupt a candidate if I believe that the candidate has either misconstrued the question or is being non-responsive or maybe perhaps needs some clarification. It's purely discretionary. I'll try to be very fair about that. We do ask the audience that is present to please refrain from any table conversation during the program so it doesn't distract our candidates and allows every one of them to make his or her position known to our community. The Business Association Committee also asks if the audience would please withhold any applause until the end of each particular segment after all the candidates on that particular segment have completed their closing statements. And with that, we will begin our program for the selectmen candidates. There are three candidates seeking to win the two positions that are open, one of the two positions. They're George Dixon, Emily Antle, and Laura Merrill. Let me read their introductions. For George Dixon's family has lived in Chelmsford for more than 125 years. He is a proud Chelmsfordite, having served as a member of the Board of Selectmen for 3 terms, and as a liaison to the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, the Permanent Building Committee, Water Departments, and Capital Planning Committee, to name just a few. He has been a town meeting representative for 15 years, a coach and mentor for youth sports, and board member for the Paul Center. He is seeking re-election for his 4th term as selectman. He's also on the Chelmsford High School Alumni Association Board, and in fact, he was recently inducted to the Chelmsford High School Hall of Fame, and we congratulate him for that. The second candidate for the selectman position is Emily Antle. Emily is the wife of a small business owner and the mother of 2 small children, ages 5 and 1. Her preschooler attends Keystone Montessori School in Chelmsford. She has lived in Chelmsford for almost 6 years. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Peninsular Spanish Literature and a Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction, and has done additional coursework in biology and chemistry. She taught Spanish and French in public and private schools for over a decade and did project management for a small textbook translation and publishing company for 2 years. She's directed a school play, coached a spring track club, and participated in accreditation teams at 3 different schools and other school-related committees. And while in college, she worked part-time in a small store, both alone, open to close, and with other employees, and did additional work in restaurants as a server. So that's Emily's introduction. Laura Merrill. She is a 23-year resident of Chelmsford and has 2 children, one who recently graduated from and one currently attending the Chelmsford High School. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and works for Doble Engineering Company as a software developer of business solutions. In addition to being a current member of the Board of Selectmen, Laura is currently serving her 3rd term as a town meeting representative in Precinct 2. Thank you for your introductions. And let's begin with the questioning. Our first question, and this will be answered George first, followed by Emily, followed by Laura. Do you think that tax classification should be adopted by the town's Board of Selectmen? And do you think that it is fair to overcharge commercial and industrial property owners by shifting the tax burden? Please explain your position. George.
I think it's time that we take a very hard look at it. I am in favor of tax classification, a split rate. I've heard a lot of rumors about certain figures and numbers, and I don't know where they came from because they're way overblown. However, all we're trying to do with this non-binding referendum was to alert the people who aren't familiar with the process. I mean, this vote won't take place until next December, and I feel as though between now and then, we should have a committee, if in fact, depending on how the vote comes out, have a committee made up of everybody, business people, people on the Board of Selectmen, people from the Department of Revenue, and try to put a fair program together. So yes, I do believe it, and I don't think it's fair to tax anybody any more than they should be taxed. No, but everybody has their own opinion, and I think we can do it in an orderly fashion.
Okay, Emily?
I don't believe it's overcharging. I am for a split tax rate. Comparable towns to Chelmsford have split tax rates. It does not affect their business in a negative way. Taxes are not even at the top of the list of what businesses consider when moving to a town, according to a Northeastern University study I was reading. In fact, they are 9th on the list, beyond parking, worker availability, and the quality and availability of space with amenities for their workers. So I think taxes are irrelevant by and large, particularly when you are looking at the large multinationals that we need to fill the spaces that we have vacant. The non-binding vote that the current Board of Selectmen decided to bring is to help raise some awareness with the town and to help bring voters to the polls. We have fairly low voter turnout, and it would be nice to see more people participating. And this was a way that they thought that they might be able to get more people in and participating and paying attention.
Laura, if you would answer that same question, please.
I do not support tax classification for Chelmsford at this time. When I see the information for what are called comparable towns, they are not representative of Chelmsford in my mind. They have a much higher business rate. There are currently Chelmsford is lower than 20%, and that is historically where we've been for quite a while, which means that a relatively small tax savings on the residents is going to be a significant tax increase that's going to be absorbed by just a few hundred businesses. If we were to go towards a tax rate, we would have to put something in for small businesses so that they would not be as impacted.
Thank you. Our second question for this evening, and we'll start with Emily. The Business Association opposed the language used in non-binding referendum question number 6 relating to tax classification. I'm going to read the referendum question that was submitted by Selectman Diggs and then ask you to compare that question to the tax classification referendum question that appeared on the town's ballot in 1985. Now, the 1985 question was, should the Board of Selectmen vote to establish different percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by different use classifications of real property as set forth in General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 2A? And by the way, the vote in that particular referendum question was 254 voters voted yes for that, but over 72% or 680 votes voted against it. Now, you compare that question to Mr. Diggs' referendum question that he submitted to the board. The Board of Selectmen votes each year to continue with a single rate or to enact a dual rate. A dual rate would result in lowering taxes for residents, but increasing taxes for commercial entities. Should the Board of Selectmen vote to split the rate? Now, Emily, do you agree or disagree that the question as phrased by Selectman Diggs is unfair or not? Please explain your position.
No, I think it's a fairly straightforward question. I also think that the world was completely different in 1985, and what was voted for in the 80s is not relevant to today, given how many things have changed.
What do you mean things have changed in terms of the percentages of business to residents that's changed?
Well, for one, in terms of businesses, real wages have not gone up in that time. Taxes have gone down repeatedly over and over. We have not maintained much of our infrastructure. We have not upgraded it. We have let lots of it slide. It has not. So we are upside down in terms of what we need to be spending to maintain and upgrade our infrastructure for the growing population. The population has more than doubled in the area. We have significantly increased our population. It is continuing to grow. And what was relevant in 1985 is so far from relevant today.
Well, do you agree that classification doesn't raise an additional dollar revenue? Do you agree with that?
It depends on how it's done. I understand that the question at the top is to shift the burden, which would not raise extra revenue. However, what it would do, it depends.
Well, that doesn't
we
raise
need
an
more
additional...
money coming in because we have not maintained our infrastructure and upgraded it. There are bills to pay. We are in debt. So, given that taxes have been dropping steadily, overall, wages have not gone up. Money has to come from somewhere to pay for infrastructure.
Okay.
I don't think it's unfair to ask the people who want to drive the economy, who want to be seen as... I don't think it's unfair for business who has gotten so many breaks in the past 2 generations to not contribute more.
Thank you. Laura, your position on the questions about whether this referendum question is phrased fairly or not.
I have to say, just sitting here, listening to both questions, both of them, it caused me to think. I really had to stop and put the words together, try to figure out what is going on here. And so one of the questions was written very technically, and that required a lot of thought to break down. The question that was phrased by Selectman Diggs is more simply put, but also requires a lot of thought to break it down. And I think in both cases, the intent was to generate conversation and to get people involved with it. They're just two different approaches to the same thing.
Do you believe the question as phrased was fair?
I think it was fair.
Okay, thank you. George?
I think they were both, they were both fair. I think the first one was a little cumbersome, but you only had 938 people voting, so they had enough time to read the whole thing. But I think that Mr. Diggs' question is fair enough. I think all we're trying to do is create an interest among the town, and so the people get involved. And when that vote comes up in December, that everybody knows how it's done, what the procedure is, and they can contact their selectmen and let them know how they feel about letting them vote. I think it would be fair, so, yes.
Our fourth question, and this is going to be a specific question to each of the candidates. It's a long introduction to it. So each question is going to be specific, and I'll ask it to the candidate who then has to answer. For more than 20 years, candidates for selectmen have been asked by the Chelmsford Business Association whether or not he or she supported adopting tax classification. Each and every member of the present Board of Selectmen publicly committed to the CBA's members that he or she did not support a policy of tax classification. Then this past November and December, 2 of those members reneged and did a 180-degree turn by advocating for classification. People in our community, and especially local commercial property owners and business owners, question the credibility of those selectmen and that they have proven that they are simply untrustworthy. The CBA Candidates Night Committee now has these questions for our particular candidates. And George, we'll start with you.
Okay.
You are one of the 2 selectmen who broke his promise to the business community. In the eyes of the business community and association, you betrayed your word. Please tell our members if you acknowledge that you broke your word, your promise about this, and explain what specific facts caused you to break that promise.
Well, I don't think if everything I said 3 years ago, you're going to hold me to it today, I think that I probably break my word once in a while. But it was not any intent to break the word. As a matter of fact, I remember another situation that came up regarding something else that comes in front of us every year. And you, as the attorney for the CBA, usually represents them in opposition to any issuing of any liquor licenses, beer and wine licenses, which we have never issued since I've been on the board. There's 7 of them in the thing. However, this year, you came in and you berated us for not allowing your client, not the CBA, you went against the CBA. And so what I think what we did is no different than what you did. As a matter of fact, it's less, because 9 years later, I'm 71 years old. I was 62. I'm running into people that I was in school with and a little older than me, and every day I see them on the street, and they're crying. All they do is talk about taxes, complain about they can't make, they got to move out of town, they need help. So I felt it was time to look at it, and I believe it is.
All right, and I am obviously, after that answer, going to ask you a follow-up, and I'd like you to answer the question that was put to you and not redirect it. Do you believe, A, you broke your promise, number 1, and 2, if you don't believe you broke it, just explain what facts caused you to change your position.
I think I just explained that I don't believe I broke my promise. Okay. That was a vote for 3 years prior. It was for that year or that term.
Okay. Thank you.
What changed me, what made me change the vote was exactly what I said. Running into classmates, people I graduated with, people who were a little bit ahead of me, a little behind me, who were now on fixed incomes, and losing their houses and they're in trouble, and they're asking for relief. So I just thought that we...
May I ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
And then we'll move on to the next candidate. But is it your position that because taxes rose on the residential homeowner this year by $272, that catapulted your change of position?
I think that it was obviously a part of it. I mean, it isn't just...
So the obvious follow-up question to that is, taxes increased by almost that same amount the prior 2 years.
Well, you didn't let me finish my question, my answer. My answer was the 272 was only 1 year. Their taxes have doubled in the last 10 years. So I guess now it's about time to start thinking about it. I'm not, so...
Okay.
And the sad part is nobody approached us after we voted that way to say, what are you people trying to do? And all I hear was rumors that they want to do 50%, they want to double our taxes. I'm going to pay, the guy isn't even paying 500, I don't know, he said, we're going to go up 6,000 on our taxes this year. Where did they get this information? I don't know.
Okay. Emily, when you were asked at various forums about your position about this issue, you suggested that the commercial property owners should seek new accountants. And frankly, that comment was perceived by some in the Chelmsford Business Association as coming from someone who's not familiar with the ins and outs or the details or the impact that tax classification has on commercial property owners. Prior tax classification committee reports generated over the last 20 years uniformly acknowledge that tax classification is discriminatory. It's an unfair policy because commercial property owners are not offered the same services, just as, like, for example, trash removal in schools, and because those business owners also pay a separate personal property tax that residential taxpayers do not pay. So, Emily, the first question the association had is, have you read any of those reports? And what facts or conclusions in those reports do you think are wrong? And then how would you justify supporting tax classification based on the review of those reports? Please.
I have read them. I've read them very carefully and very thoroughly. I've also talked with the tax assessor in town and had him answer all of my questions. You, as business owners, are aware of the personal property tax going into it. That is a standard tax that is across Massachusetts. You know that that is part of it. When you are writing a business plan, and I have been part of writing several business plans over the years, you factor in taxes, you factor in expenses, you factor in all of the costs, fees, and everything else. And actually, businesses do take advantages of schools and services and roads and police and fire. Your workforce is educated by schools. Your clients and customers travel to you on roads. Your electricity comes over wires. Your water comes from municipal services. You may pay for trash. However, the surrounding area, the town pays to keep it beautiful and free of trash. You do, if not directly benefit, indirectly benefit, both, depending on which service you're talking about. The schools directly impact the value of a community and the perception of the value of a community. So you take full advantage of the schools and the people in them.
Do you think that the business community property owners benefit more from the services that are provided by the town under the budget, or do they actually benefit less?
I think that that's something of a ridiculous question because many people don't benefit directly from the schools. I'm 40. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and for the vast majority of my adult life, I did not benefit from the schools directly. I did not have children in the schools. My children are still too little to attend public schools, so one might argue that I don't benefit from the schools. Why should I pay taxes? Because I don't like having to make my own change at stores. I don't like talking to people who don't have a basic working understanding of history, language,
That's a
math.
fair point. Let me please follow up.
Even though I was not, and I still don't directly benefit from the public schools,
Let me ask you the question, though.
As a member of society and a contributing member of society.
Emily?
Yes.
The question really is, do the businesses use more of the services such that they should be required to pay more for the same services that are provided to every other person within this community? That's the question.
You are members of this community.
Should we have to pay more for the same or less services? Yes or no?
Those who can pay more do. That's how it works. Flat taxes don't work at all, ever.
Okay.
Trickle down does not work. Never has, never will. So those who can pay more will pay more.
Thank you. Laura, you have consistently rejected voting in favor of a split rate, consistent with what you promised you would do. You are aware of the prior committee reports about this, and you voted 3 times in favor of maintaining a single rate. Yet, you voted in support of allowing the non-binding referendum question to be put on the 2018 ballot. Since selectmen are required by law, by statute, to make the decision about a uniform or split tax rate, and that it is not something left to the general public to decide upon, please tell us, what purpose does it serve to put a non-binding referendum on the ballot? Will the outcome of that non-binding referendum cause you to change your position?
The reason that I thought that this question should go forward to be on the ballot is because, in my mind, this is a democracy issue. If there is a process to bring information forward and to get it in front of the people, and that process is followed correctly, then I am not going to say that I know better, and and the people shouldn't have an opportunity to weigh in on this. I was very disappointed when earlier in the process another a ballot question came forth, and because it came forth as a resident, the Board of Selectmen voted against it, and they will not have that same opportunity at democracy. So I think it was a democracy issue. The question, when we get the results of the ballot back, that will just be one more piece of information that will be available to the Board of Selectmen to, in addition to the standard reports provided by the town. It's just one more piece of a big pie of information that needs to be reviewed every year to make this decision.
The follow-up to that is, as you are very aware, that is a public hearing in which it's a posted agenda item. It's something that's available on the website. It's something that is uniformly put at that time of the year, so it's not unexpected. So don't residents already have an opportunity that if they have a complaint about those kinds of issues, about having a split rate or not, or taxes, that's the opportunity for the general public, including residents, to attend and present their arguments to you. Why then do we need a referendum to do on top of that, is, I guess, the point.
I appreciate that point of view, and I can also appreciate the point of view of a good majority of the residents out there that are sitting at home with their families, the ones that are not following the day-to-day goings-on of local government, may not be aware of that meeting. And if having a ballot question in April gets it on their mind, and that gets them to put it on their calendar to come to the meeting in December, then I think that's a big win for this town.
Thank you. Our next question is going to be answered first by Emily, and then Laura, and then George. What votes taken by the Board of Selectmen in the last 3 years do you think were wrong or had the wrong outcome? And why do you think that those decisions were incorrect or wrong? So, Emily, what are those particular votes that you think were improperly taken or came out with the wrong result?
I question the purchase of 101 Mill Road without a solid plan with deadlines and without reselling it. I think when it was brought to town meeting and it was asked whether or not we wanted to maintain it as a town attraction for weddings or whatever, the proposal was, and it was voted down, that that should have been the cue to sell it. I think that it's just something the town really should not be getting overly involved in terms of real estate without definite, specific goals in mind and an ability to move the properties through.
Emily, that had to do with the town meeting vote. We're asking about the Board of Selectmen. That body, that vote by that body, not town meeting. So,
they chose to bring that to town meeting.
So for the fact of bringing it to town meeting, you think was an error in judgment?
Yeah, I think they should have just moved it along.
What do you mean by moved it along?
If nobody wanted to maintain it, if the town didn't want to maintain it, you can only hold on. I just think that not enough thought was given to what they wanted to do with the property. I think that there wasn't enough research conducted before making the decision. There was a lot of questions about bed and breakfast versus inn, like things that could have been looked up. It just seemed that there was no plan, and there was no final goal in mind.
Okay, thank you. Laura, what criticisms do you have of what votes were taken by you as a member of the board that you think your board came out with the wrong outcome?
This was a difficult question for
Thank
me
you.
because I think part of having a Board of Selectmen with 5 members on it, all with different backgrounds, you do get the right outcome. You do get the right vote. That's the way that the process works. One particular incident comes to mind, and it was more of a procedural kind of an issue. Last summer when we were recommending articles, I remember one article came up about whether to make the town constable an appointed versus an elected position, and because one of the selectmen was new, he did not understand the process that we're at, and he voted opposite to the way he wanted to. And I think if he, at the time we found out later that the Board of Selectmen vote would have been unanimous, and I think bringing a unanimous vote to town meeting would have held more weight. So I think one thing I took of that is how much of the process that you learn over the first few years that you are a Board of Selectmen. Your first term, you're really trying to scramble and learn not only all the issues, but the process. Okay. And so,
thank you.
Thank you.
George, your answer to that question?
Okay, for the last 3 years, I think, and my big one was the 101 Mill Road myself. I was totally against it from the beginning. And we voted to give Paul authorization to spend up to $500,000, which was going to become a lot more than that, and it has since then. I mean, I'm sure the people that wanted to do it initially had the proper intentions, and they thought, somebody got up at the last minute to vote at the town meeting and said, if you don't buy this, it's going to get purchased by, and they're going to by a 40B developer, and he's going to put 44 units in there, which was a lot of baloney. But I just think that we shouldn't have even sent it there. So I fought it. But
any other vote besides the Mill Road?
What I and this is not a criticism of anybody. It's basically a criticism of the procedure. It has to do with the charter review. And I respect everybody who was on that committee and the way they handled things, but maybe not the way they handled things in the end, because I'm criticizing some part of it. But I mean, anybody that gets on a committee, and people have no idea how much time and effort goes into volunteering. Like, they have no idea what this is all about. I think that anything that goes in front of the Charter Review Committee should then, if it draws any kind of activity at all amongst any of their members, it should go in front of the town meeting for additional,
Thank you.
voting.
I appreciate it. The next question. This will be first to be answered by Laura. There is discussion about the need to construct a new modern high school to educate our children, and that the current facility is technologically outdated and inefficient with current teaching methods. In the next 3 years, would you support a tax override to build a new school? Please let us know your position.
No, I would not support a tax override to build a new school. I attended those assessment meetings, and despite what some people are saying, that is not the case with our high school. Our high school was built in 1975. It is fairly new, and it has been well maintained over the years. In fact, to the point where it really is not going to qualify for an MSBA grant, which is why I'm against the process as we're doing it. What we really need are some middle school science labs, and we need to replace the aging modular classrooms that we were supposed to address when we approved the assessment study 3 years ago, and we proceeded to ignore. They're still on the property. They're now 3 years older, and we have to deal with that problem.
Thank you, Laura. George?
I'd have to look at the facts at the time, Mr. Moderator.
Well, as the facts as you know them now.
As the facts as I know them now, I don't know if we're going to have. I don't know all the facts, but basically, I mean, are we going to have enough room with what we have currently? How much money are we going to have to spend on what we have in the next 3 years? And the other big factor would be, what's the SBA going to say? How much are they going to come back and give us? If they come back and give us 60, 70% of the money, and it's cheap money, and if that's what we have to do, it may be the time to do it. So, to be honest with you, I could vote either way. I would have no problem voting yes if I really believed it was the right thing, and if it wasn't, I would vote no. But
okay. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Emily.
This is a question of having long-term goals and needing to figure out a path to get to those long-term goals by dividing them up into small, manageable chunks. And this is one of the things that I think Chelmsford really needs to improve on. We need to look at our long-term goals and figure out how we are going to fund them, how we are going to get there, what steps we will take along the way. This is project management. This is teaching and course design. This is what I can do. I may not vote per se for a high school. It might be better to redo the oldest buildings first. I would have to look at the actual proposals put forth by whatever the architectural firm that we hired suggested. This does start a cascade of redevelopment of school buildings, but they all need it. Our schools need to be redone. The auditorium wasn't attached because they were afraid of code violations. So if you didn't want to open the walls because of code violations, it means that they're not up to code.
So if you are on the board, elected to the board, and the question comes up over the next year or two, are you going to recommend that an override be supported by town
You have
residents?
to pay for it somehow.
All right, we'll take that as a yes then?
So yes.
Thank you.
You have to pay for the things you want.
Thank you.
If you want new schools, they have to be paid for.
All right, let's go to our next question. And actually, it's the questions among the candidates. So you each were told that you would have an opportunity to ask a question of each of your other candidate on your panels. So we'll start, and I'll go right in order. Laura, you get a chance to ask George a question, please.
Okay. George, in 2015 at Fall Town Meeting, you supported to allow inclusionary housing within the town center and commercially zoned areas. and were quoted as saying, "I don't think these units are going to be large units. I think they're going to be designed to be smaller type units." How do you feel about the Winstanley and the 104 Turnpike Road projects? Do they match what you envision being developed there in these districts, in these overlay districts?
Well, I've never been a big supporter of the Winstanley project, but I don't want to be negative about something that's happening in town. It's going to go through. I guess it's going through. It's being started, so I guess now that it's done, we have to support it. But I was not a big proponent of it. The other project, I think, if it's laid out properly, I think there's plenty of space out there to handle it. And also, it's close enough to what I hope is going to be a lot of new industrial building out there and commercial building. It's going to require a lot of workforce people, and hopefully they will be able to occupy it and be able to live there and work close by and maybe not create as much traffic in the area. But so I guess I don't really want to go against anything that we're working on. I don't want to be negative about things. It's the same thing as what we've already discussed tonight. Some of these things are tough choices, but sometimes you have to make a tough decision, and not a very popular one.
George, you get to ask a question of Emily.
Okay. Well, Emily, I know you're going to be new. You know, if you got elected, you'll be new to the board. So you maybe want to feel your way around a little bit, or what have you. But do you have something in mind that you'd really like to accomplish in your first year as, as a member of the Board of Selectmen?
That's a big question, George. I have spent the past 3 months doing an enormous amount of reading and talking to people and research, just trying to learn about all of the issues. So depending on what comes up, depending on what the result of the Springtown meeting is, that would inform my decision on what to work on for the rest of the year. I think that the Springtown meeting and the warrant articles are important in shaping what the Board of Selectmen does. Obviously, tax classification would be something that comes up later on this year. It seems that we need to really look hard at school issues and rebuilding and how to pay for them and how to get there. It seems like there's a lot going on, and I need to hear more about exactly what the rest of the board wants to do to figure out how I can best help and best work with the other board members.
Emily, you have a chance to ask a question of Laura.
I feel like many things have been discussed. And Laura, if you wouldn't vote for a new high school, if that comes up, and I know you said you would vote for labs or for replacing the outdated modulars, where do you think we should start rebuilding?
I'm glad you asked me that, Emily. I think we have to take a look at the Dore-Whittier assessment and really look at the priorities, the 1 to 5 year range, and try to focus them. What I would ideally like to see is addressing some of the issues with the middle school. I'd love to see a small addition off of the McCarthy School that contains science labs and room to replace the modular classrooms. Down the line, we want to look at future goals. I would like to see, we have the Westland School is now half empty. We have plenty of space, but we really need to deal with, there's a bunch of other modular classrooms over at Parker, an entire grade over there. If we could come up with a smaller project that, say, build a second floor on the front of the center school, redistrict the elementaries, and take those modular classrooms that we've purchased at all the elementary schools, use them to replace the Parker School. I think we can do this in steps and stages, and if we need to do an override to do a small project, that I could support.
That was my next question.
Well,
how would you pay for this?
Well, unfortunately, you asked your question. So we're going to go to the next round of questions where Laura gets a chance to ask a question of Emily.
Emily, affordable housing is a really important issue that can come before the Board of Selectmen several times a year, but it's also important to try to balance this with the ever-growing need, with the needs and the quality of life of the current residents. So, Emily, how do you feel about 40B development?
I think workforce development is vital. It helps seniors stay in the town that they love, that they have contributed to for so long. It helps them stay near their families where they can help out significantly. My mother certainly helps us on a regular basis with our children, and it is a wonderful thing to be able to have older family members who have time and knowledge and interest in any number of things, gardening or childcare or crafts and hobbies, anything. I think of the people in my neighborhood who are retirees and how much they contribute. It also helps people like nurses, teachers, firefighters. It's workforce development housing, and I do not understand how that would do anything except improve the lives of the rest of Chelmsford. It enriches the community. It adds a breadth of diversity and experience and a wealth of information and wonderful people to our community.
Next question is a question from George to Laura.
Okay. I guess, Laura, I would ask you the same question, only what would you like to do? What would you like to see happen? Your number one topic that you'd like to see happen next year if you're back on the board?
If I get back on the board, I think in order to pursue what I was discussing on the school project, I think one thing I've heard over the last few years from both the school and from the town manager is that the school buildings themselves are the town's responsibility. They're not the school's responsibility. It's the town's responsibility to maintain them, and we've been doing a great job. But I would like the town to form a committee that comprises of Board of Selectmen, school committee, DPW, Permanent Building Committee, and residents, and to start to take apart the Dorr-Whittier study and to start to get the priorities outlined in that study in line with our current capital improvement plan.
Okay, let's now go to our press, and we're pleased to welcome Alana Melanson from the Lowell Sun, who is here this evening. Lana, your questions, if any, to the candidates of your choosing.
Sorry to say I am all set with the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Okay. With that in mind, I would like to do one or two quick, very follow-ups on two things that came up, and then we will go to closing statements. Emily, in one of your answers about the classification, you said there are towns that are comparable to Chelmsford that have it. And by that, I'm presuming you're referring to the city of Lowell and Billerica and Burlington. But are you aware that Westford does not have it, Tingsboro does not have it, Carlisle does not have it, Groton does not have it, Dunstable does not have it? Which are we to be more comparable to? Are we more comparable to a city or a sizable town like Billerica, or are we more like Westford, Carlisle, Groton, Dunstable? In your mind, which are we more comparable to? Or what do you want us to be compared to?
Are we 1,500 people from having our own state representative and not splitting among four? 1,500 people away? We're nothing like Groton or Carlisle, which are wonderful towns. They are so beautiful, but they are very residential and very quiet. We are looking at that 129 overlay. We are looking at filling the shoes that Kronos left behind. We are looking at all of this development of luxury condominiums and apartments. This is a growing town, and we're not very many people away from having our own state senator, as best I understand it. And I think that, I don't think that it's forward. I think that we need to look forward, and we need to look at what is actually happening. And if you want more business, if you want the multinationals to come and provide all the wonderful things that multinationals provide in terms of revenue and jobs and opportunity, this is not a small, lovely residential town. This has a lot more to offer. This is much more like a Marlborough or a Hudson, or it is growing. Do you want it to grow and become more vibrant and interesting?
Thank you for your response. At this point, we will, and Mr. Dixon, respectfully, you kind of brought the question back to me when I asked you a question earlier about a position that I took as an attorney representing a private party before your board. Do you see somehow that when a person who is hired to represent a particular client's needs or goals is to be judged on the same level as a person who has run for public office and made representations to a community, when seeking that public office, that he will follow a certain pathway? Do you think those two are the same?
Well, I'm not even sure that one of them exists. I'm not sure that when you make a vote in a specific year that you're going to guarantee you're going to do that for life. It's not like you're taking a vow to marry somebody. It's
it's selective. Okay. I never heard of marriage being so that selective in the future, but
well,
okay, it's fair. It's a fair response. Let's go to our closing statements, and in this instance, Laura, you're going to have the first opportunity.
Thank you, Doug. I want to thank the Chelmsford Business Association for hosting this event this evening and inviting us here to speak. Thank you to the Chelmsford Telemedia for covering the event this evening, and to everyone in the audience for watching. I moved to Chelmsford 23 years ago because Chelmsford was a desirable yet affordable town that I could thrive in with my family. Great schools, it's got great open spaces, it has great amenities. But in order for this American dream to continue to be a reality for me and for residents like me, Chelmsford officials need to do a better job about controlling the new debt that we're adding to our budget each year, and to learn to live within our means. I've spoken to a number of residents over the past few months, and their message is resoundingly clear. They want to see tax relief and slower growth of tax rates.
Do you have a last sentence?
Yes. I respectfully ask for your vote, one of your two votes for the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen on April 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. George, your opportunity.
Thank you. First of all, thank the CBA for having this, especially where you had to plan it once and it got postponed, which I'm glad it was, because I was able to, bang, bang. I was able to be here, which I wouldn't have been the first time. And make no mistake about it, the town is all upset right now. And classification is a very difficult topic. I even think the CBA for sending out the mailing. They send out posters, they get things up there. We got to get people involved. But we have to do it in an orderly fashion. I don't think necessarily social media is the way to get on there and just start kicking the daylights out of one another. I think it's very important. I don't think it's been discussed in over 12 years. I think it's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, I have a lot of friends in the business, or I had a lot of friends in the business world in this town. I've lived here my whole life. So, but it's a hard decision, and sometimes you have to make a hard decision. There's some people in the audience that have been in office, lost their lost their office because they did make a tough decision, but they made the one they thought was right. And I believe at this time, the right decision is to take a look at this and study it and do it properly.
George,
So,
do you have a
thank
last sentence you want to add to that?
Well, if I would humbly ask that
There we go.
maybe you would consider me for one of your votes on the 3rd of April.
Thank you, George. I'm glad
Thank
you
you.
had the chance to do that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Emily, your opportunity.
Thank you to the CBA, thank you to the other groups who have hosted, and to all the voters who have taken the time to watch the debates at any platform and to learn about all of our candidacies and the issues. I agree with George that sometimes tough issues come up and we have to look at all of the factors and make decisions and make responsible decisions. I am for infrastructure, accessibility, family-friendly green spaces for all of Chelmsford residents now and in the future. I humbly ask that you give me one of your votes on Tuesday, April 3rd. Thank you.
That concludes our first segment. Let's hear it for our candidates. We will take a brief intermission, and then we'll have our school committee candidates come up and have them have a chance to answer a few questions. So join us in a few minutes. Thank you. thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get ready to begin the second portion. Can we please be seated and be prepared to start the second part of the program? Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to commence the second segment of our presentation this evening, and this is our school committee candidates. There are two candidates seeking one open position, Donna Newcomb and Jamie Brown. Let's introduce these candidates as they've so told us to represent them. Donna has been a resident of Chelmsford for 20 years, and she resides at 16 Janet Road with her children, Jack and Emma. A Westfield State University graduate, she worked as a special education teacher for 18 years at Lighthouse School. Donna has a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling from Boston University. Donna currently works as a special education teacher at Lowell High School, and she volunteers in the Outdoor Adventure Club to help inner city students explore the outdoors. At St. Mary's Church, Donna has taught religious education. She's coached youth basketball, field hockey, and was a Girl Scout leader. She's currently a member of the Library Board of Trustees and a town meeting representative. She was actively involved in the South Row and Chelmsford High PTOs and the school council. And she's co-founder of the Initiative for Local Aid, which works to increase local aid to municipalities. Jamie is a retired Master Sergeant in the United States Army, where she served as a military police officer. She served all over to include Iraq and Afghanistan. During her career, she served in numerous leadership positions. She retired in 2013 and became a stay-at-home mom. She continues to support her husband of 13 years in his Army career while raising their 3 children, Wyatt, age 8, Olivia, 4, and Isabel, 2. So we gave the plugs to all the kids of the candidates. That's important. Jamie has a bachelor's in business administration and a master's of business administration with a specialization in accounting. She has served as treasurer for nonprofit organizations, been a mentor for youth organizations, served as an assistant coach for the Chelmsford Youth Soccer League, is an active parishioner of St. John's Catholic Church in North Chelmsford, and is currently the co-treasurer for the Harrington School PTO. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
And having seen what we just went through, we'll try to bring this one to a little bit more focus on questions that are a little bit narrower, hopefully. First question, and we're going to ask Donna to answer this first, followed by Jamie. What motivated you to run for the school committee? Please explain to our audience here and at home what you identify as the critical action items that you want to address if elected to the school committee.
So I think there were several things that motivated me. Certainly my involvement in the schools with my own children as they went through the public school system. I really enjoyed my time working with the PTOs, the Council of Schools, and the school councils. I'm also an educator of 30 years, and I feel very invested in wanting to provide students with the best possible education. As far as one of the things that I would like to accomplish on the school committee is, right away I think that we need to go back to refocusing our efforts on where they should be, which is teachers and students. I think that we need to bring back a level of civility, respect, and decorum to the meetings, and that we need to get focused on the real issues and not allow ourselves to be sidetracked by some of the other things that have recently sidetracked the school committee.
Jamie, your response to that question.
Yes, so my motivation to run, first and foremost, is my desire and call to serve. I served my country, and now I'm calling to be a positive, serve my community. I currently have 3 kids, 2 of which are in the Chelmsford School District. My 3rd one will be coming through. So for the next 16 years, I have a firsthand, frontline, invested interest in our schools because my children will be benefiting directly from the schools. And then lastly, parents deserve a right to be heard when it comes to the decisions being made and express their views or opinions and be informed about why and how decisions are being made. And that was one of the reasons, one of the critical things I think that have been lacking in the past year, along with the professionalism and lack of decorum and professionalism and responsibility that the school committee has to the people that elected them to serve in that position.
Thank you for the responses. This question, I think, will lead towards some of the comments you've made in your responses. Jamie, this time you'll be answering first. Do you feel that there is a strained relationship between the Chelmsford Federation of Teachers on the one hand and the school committee and school administration on the other? If so, how would you, as a new school committee member, work to help repair or strengthen that relationship moving forward for the benefit of the school district?
Yes, I believe there is a strained relationship, and my plan in place would be to bring people to the table to discuss and remove the personal issues that are currently lingering between members within the CFT and within the school committee. Also, we need to effectively, consistently, and fairly apply all rules, laws, and regulations. We can't pick and choose what parts of what contracts we want to abide by and not abide by on both sides of the aisle. So we need to be consistent in those applications. And then most of all, the teachers need to be heard. They need to feel supported. And I don't think at this point a lot of our current teachers feel like they're being supported in what they do in the classroom.
So the follow-up to that is, what specific rules or regulations are you feeling that are not being uniformly enforced?
So I don't want to go into specifics on certain things when it comes to contractual agreements, but I will say this, that there is a lack of procedures, which is causing a conflict on how resolution or grievances are being dealt with or handled within the school buildings and then within the school committee.
Okay. Donna, your opportunity to answer the question of the strained relationship between the teachers and admin and school committee.
So yes, I also believe that there is a strained relationship between all parties right now, which is unfortunate because we're really actually all working towards the same thing, which is providing a quality education for the students in the Chelmsford Public Schools. I think one of the things that we need to do again is to define what it is that our vision is, and that we need to all be able to commit to that and be able to move forward, come up with a plan of action, and then be able to follow through on it and not allow ourselves to be distracted or derailed by any of the other issues that may come along. I think that with regards to the teachers, we have a lot of great teachers in this system. I think that many of them actually do feel supported, but I think that many are also feeling overwhelmed by a lot of the lack of focus on their needs in the classroom and student learning issues.
Let's go to a third question. This time, Donna, you're going to have the opportunity to answer first. If elected to the school committee, what role do you think a school committee member should play when parents raise concerns that may involve student confidentiality issues? So if a parent approached you raising concern about another child or a student from another family, what do you think is the appropriate response in your capacity as a school committee member?
Well, if it's confidential information, then it's not really something that can be discussed. I wouldn't be able to discuss another student's issues. Now, if that parent wanted to talk to me about their concerns regarding their child, that would be fine. But with regards to discussing another student's issues in the classroom or what may be happening in the classroom with regards to other students, that would absolutely be out of bounds.
And why is that?
Because of the rules around confidentiality, in particular FERPA.
Okay. Jamie, your response to that question?
So if a parent comes to me with issues and they want to try and divulge or discuss confidential information related to someone that is not their child, again, not open for discussion. I will not divulge or reveal any confidential information related to anybody because that's just illegal. Second, I would instruct that parent or ask that parent, have you brought it to the teacher's attention? If so, what was the result? Have you brought it to the principal in that particular school? If so, what was the result? Have you brought your concerns to the superintendent? If so, what was the result? I would try and facilitate that parent to use what we would consider the chain of command and the flow of resolution to see if we can get the grievance or issue addressed appropriately. That's what I would do.
Thank you. Our next question, Jamie, you get to answer first. What criticisms, if any, do you have relating to the actions or votes taken by the school committee over the last year or so? What do you think the school committee should have done differently?
Well, it's no secret my biggest grievance with the school committee is their lack of professionalism, especially dealing with parents and the community members when addressing the school committee board. So I think that definitely needs to be addressed and corrected and rectified. The other biggest concern I have at this point is the lack of accessibility or ease of information. The information out there that is available is buried or isn't relevant or readily available for parents of immediate concern or issue. So I think those two things need to be rectified.
Are there any particular votes that you're aware of that have been taken that you disagreed with?
I don't want to say disagree with the votes because it wasn't the vote so much I would have disagreed with, but it's the lack of information on why said vote why they stood on that position.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I just want to make sure of it. Thank you. Donna, your answer to that question, please.
So there's actually a couple things I would like to have seen done differently. And I believe I stated this in another debate. After everything that we had gone through in the town several years ago, I really believe that it was in the town's best interest and the school committee's best interest to have a screening process and an interview process for the superintendent. I think that while Superintendent Lang is doing a great job, I think we did owe it to the town to be as transparent as we possibly could through that whole process. Another thing that I would like to see reenacted is as we, for whatever reason, public forum has been discontinued. There was a time when the school committee allowed public input sessions about twice a year. Those no longer exist, and I think that those are vitally important in order to be able to get feedback around parents' concerns so that they can be addressed in a timely fashion. And then the last policy that I would like to see visited is the fact that when students return home to their foreign countries for a home visit, they remain enrolled. I would like to see them become unenrolled. This is so that the school is not responsible for their education, and it also does not affect our attendance accountability, which can affect funding.
Okay. Our next question, I'm going to ask Donna to address this first, followed by Jamie, and it's question number 6 on this year's ballot is a non-binding referendum question about tax classification. No one disputes that tax classification does not raise any new or additional money for the town budget. It's also very well known that the Business Association strongly opposes it because it substantially increases the taxes paid by business property owners who use less services than residential taxpayers, like schools, for example. It basically makes business property owners pay more even when they may be using less services. Do you support the referendum? Do you think that imposing disproportionate and higher taxes on commercial and industrial properties is a good policy? Please explain your position. Donna?
So with regards to the issue around classification, as was discussed in the previous debate, that is a decision that the select would make sometime in December. With regards to the process, I'm going to be honest with you. I've had a chance to look at Frank Reen's video. I've also had a chance to look at your video. I've read a lot of the information that's come out, and I'm somewhat confused and perplexed by the competing information, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. So I would like to see a committee formed that would be able to thoroughly vet this whole classification issue. I know that Westford is currently doing a study. I think that that is something that we should definitely take a look at doing before we have the selectmen take this vote in December. One thing I would like to say, though, is I'm not sure that people are completely aware of how much the local businesses contribute to the schools. And so one of the things is, and because a lot of this happens behind the scenes. So you have ads taken out in the yearbook, ads taken out in theater programs, raffles, scholarships, after prom breakfast donations. It goes on and on.
Let me interrupt you there because we have a question coming up that I think is going to allow you to go in greater depth.
I'm going to stop there then.
Is up. So, not trying to be rude, just to keep it
that's
on
okay.
target. Jamie, what was your considerations on these questions about the referendum?
Okay, so we're candidates for the school committee. So obviously, any actions that we would do, we don't have any authority within our school committee positions if we were to be elected to actually affect any decisions as an organization. Individually, I have my own views on the tax classification, but again, as a school committee member, I would not have any direct effect, right? That's why we have Board of Selectmen, that's why we have town rep meetings, correct?
Do you think it's a good policy? We're asking for your personal opinion. Do you think it's a good policy? And we're going to ask Donna the same thing. Is it a good policy? Yes?
For split tax rate?
Yes.
I believe it is.
You believe it is?
Yes.
Donna?
Here's why I believe it is. If I can get 1 second to explain.
I will in a second.
Okay.
I just want to get, Donna, is it a good policy or not?
Not at this time.
Okay. Now, please explain. I didn't mean to rude. I want to get the candidates' positions known.
Residents use the services of the town to sustain life. Businesses use the services of the town to make a profit. So that, I believe, is how I look at understanding the need of the split tax rate.
We'll go to our next question, and this is going to follow up on the direction some of your responses were going. This time, Jamie, you're going to get to answer first. Various school organizations at all levels, PTOs, sport teams, band and drama clubs, etc., they ask for financial donations and support for the many different programs and events during a school year. And in fact, many of these events are funded almost entirely by fundraising, largely derived from donations by local business people. If tax classification is adopted by the Board of Selectmen, is it reasonable to ask for financial support for these programs from commercial property owners who will now be paying substantially higher real estate taxes under that classification system? What do you expect will be the impact on those clubs and teams? Do you think that the fundraising activities of these school programs will suffer? Jamie.
Businesses that make donations to a 501c are tax deductible and will reduce their tax liability. So any donations that the businesses make are actually helping in their tax bill at the end of the year. I don't think that would change or affect the tax rate, because the more they donate, the less of the tax liability they have.
Presuming there's profit. Okay.
Well, the schools, businesses are donating to PTOs, and PTOs here in the school district are 501cs, which are nonprofit organizations, so the deductions are writable.
Okay, so they're write-offs. Okay, fine. Donna.
I already answered that question, right? So, no, I'm just kidding.
Okay, no, you did. Well, you started answering the question.
So I think that there's two ways of looking at this. So let me back up here a little bit. I think these are the kinds of things that we really need to have out on the table. I think we really need to be talking about all of these factors, because to reduce it to something so black and white, I think is unfair, and it doesn't provide the community with all of the really relevant information that they need to have in order to make the most informed decision. Do I think it will affect? I think people really underestimate how much businesses contribute to the schools. I remember when I was at South Row, we were probably, seeking donations from businesses for 3 or 4 activities. You multiply that times the 8 schools in town, and all of a sudden, local businesses are really, giving out a lot of donations over the course of the year in order to help fund programs that are very important to the school. So I would be concerned that it would affect, but I do think it's a conversation that we need to be able to continue to have.
Going back to a question I just thought of to respond to a comment you made, Jamie. If a donation is made by an individual, is that also, to a 501c3, isn't that also deductible?
Yes.
Okay. So there's no distinction whether it's a gift or support from a resident versus a business owner? Donation
is a donation. The amount of the deduction is based on income or profit, so that was where the distinction would be made.
Very well. Thank you. I just want to clarify. Question for Donna to answer first. What makes you the better choice?
I think that 30 years of classroom experience and having 2 kids that have gone through the school system, you know, I've invested a lot. Actually, my entire adult life has been invested in education. There's not anything else that I ever wanted to do besides teach. I really feel that it's vitally important, okay, for kids to receive the best possible education that they can receive. And, you know, I've devoted a lot of time and a lot of hours, and I want to keep on doing that. I know that my own children benefited, and it's really important to me that all children benefit from a good education.
Okay. Jamie.
As I've said before, Chelmsford does have a tough choice to make on April 3rd. But we already have educators on our school committee, and we can see the current state of our school committee. I think my experience that I have and have developed in the military as an executive leader, problem-solving, decision-making, time management will help be a new tool, a new asset. I also think the fact that I am new to town, only been here less than 2 years, I can bring a new vision, fresh eyes, new perspective, and I think those qualities will help improve the current status of where our school committee is and where it's heading.
Great answers by both. Let's go to a question that we received from the audience this evening. Jamie, you will answer this first, please. For a long time, researchers have suggested that teenagers need more sleep. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I'll go on. Would you approve CHS, the high school, to start later? Would you think swapping elementary versus high school starting times would improve grades at the high school level? Jamie.
And I know we've discussed this at previous debates, and though the research is nice, and yes, I agree that more sleep does allow the brain to function better, which has been reported to increase grades, are the high school students actually going to get more sleep if they don't have to go to school till later? That's going to be your question. Obviously, too, if we chose to do that, if we went to that avenue, we'd have to look at how does changing our school time affect these extracurricular activities that our students support not only in Chelmsford, but in the surrounding communities. Because as we know, several districts will pull together to support a particular organization. So if our students are getting out at 3 o'clock and another students are getting out 2 o'clock, can they still equitably support that same organization after school activity?
Thank you for your answer. Donna, your answer to that question about swapping starting times?
I'm sorry, I work in a school system in which we have a 7:50 start time, 7:55 actually, they have to be in their seats. And while I do see some benefit, I mean, there's some drawbacks as well, particularly because there are other schools not in this area that are not on the same schedule. So one example would be that our sports teams have to be dismissed before the end of the school day in order to be able to make it to their events on time. So I think that it's definitely something worth looking into. I think that we would have to certainly consider what the impact would be on the student school day, and then take a look at what other cities and towns may want to join in that effort.
And as we did with the other candidates, we allow you to question each other. And because there's just 2 of you, we said you're each going to get 2 questions to ask each other. So Donna, you get to ask the first question to Jamie.
Okay, Jamie, you have referenced your accounting skills and experience in previous debates. What specifically would you address or change in the 2019 budget to improve it?
I don't know if there's, I don't want to say a level of, that it may need improvement, but more of a clear transparency of what is actually the money is being spent on. It's a small pot of money. We have little, and majority of our budget is going to staff, salary, and then there's a large part that says expenses under certain sublines. I would like to see a delineation under the expense line. What exactly is that $25,000 for expenses going to?
Jamie, you get to ask a question of Donna.
What do you envision your 3 primary goals would be if you were elected to the school committee?
The first one would be to review the comprehensive facilities assessment. to make sure that we were establishing timelines for implementation of the recommendations. The next thing would be, I really think that we need to deal with the student activities accounts. I think that that's something that's been neglected, although there will be an audit this year. I think that we have to be able to form some policies and guidelines around how those accounts are going to be managed, and as well as adopting maybe the MASBO policies around and recommendations around fundraising for organizations that are not necessarily attached to the school. And then the third one would be, again, reestablishing that level of trust and credibility between all of the stakeholders in town. And that would include teachers, administration, school committee, superintendent, and taxpayers and families.
Donna, do you have another question for Jamie?
The Tri-Board meets 2 to 3 times a year to discuss upcoming budget and town issues. What steps would you take to improve the working relationship between these boards?
I think coming in with a professional attitude and an open mind to willingness to negotiate and be flexible and compromising so that both entities can meet goals intended and understand a compromise is necessary, and not everyone's going to walk away 100% satisfied, but you can walk away satisfied if you're willing to work together as a team.
Jamie, your question to Donna.
Honestly, I don't have any more. I'd rather hear questions from the people if we have more that are available.
Well, we may have a couple of more questions, and before we do that, let me go to another question that came in. The schools built 20-plus modular classrooms last year in connection with the goal of implementing full-day kindergarten. Yet, by constructing these classrooms, the town hurt its argument that it is facing overcrowding conditions in context with applications to be filed with the state seeking reimbursement through state funding for new schools. Do you agree or disagree that the decision to build those modular classrooms was harmful to the town's long-term plans for building new schools? Please explain your reasoning. And on that, I'm going to ask, I believe, Jamie to go first, please.
It's a moot point. We have the modulars. They are in our system. They are part of our property. Now we need to move forward and working with what we have and working forward to improve the situation of the entire school district.
But you didn't answer, was it helpful or not helpful by doing that? That's the question.
Helpful how? Was it helpful for what? SOI to the state for funding?
Yes.
I mean, yes, it improved our own capacity. Do I think it hurt us? I'll put it this way. It's a done deal decision. Do I think that they did enough forward planning to look at what the effect would be in 3, 5, and 10 years having those modulars built? I personally did not see enough information provided that they could look at and assess what the effect was going to be 3, 5, and 10 years down the road, having dumped that money in those modulars today.
Thank you. That was the answer we were trying to get to.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you very much. Donna?
So I initially was opposed to the modular classrooms because I was very concerned about what the long-term effects on the statement of interest would be, or what the impact would be in terms of being able to provide need. So I was initially opposed, and I do think that it will have an impact on our long-range vision in terms of receiving funding from the SBA for new construction. But in the moment, when I was listening to a dad talk about 28 kids in a kindergarten class, I realized it was just too much. And I was willing to sacrifice the short-term solution of those modulars so that every student would get off, on the right foot for their education, and that it would set the stage for future success for them. I was more willing to do that than I was to take to have the impact on our long-range vision. I was more concerned about the kids right now.
Okay. Does the press have any questions for our candidates?
Yes. What is your opinion on ALICE or active shooter training in schools?
And who should answer that first?
Whoever would like to go first.
Go ahead.
Okay, active shooter training, unfortunately, is a reality in today's world. I think that giving the training where we have an option, if it's especially at high school level, or you have teachers educated and can be able to assess whether or not they can evacuate or lock down, I think is a better option. If you can look at the situation you're in and reduce risk and liability by removing yourself from that situation or locking down in that situation based on the proximity of your threat, then I think that's a good thing.
Donna?
I agree. I think the ALICE training is absolutely necessary for our teachers. I think they need to have all options available to them in the event that there should be some type of safety situation in the school. I think that they need some good training and support around these things. I think that in addition to that, they need to be able to assess their need in the classroom with regard to the age level that they're working with and what tools are available to them there in case that they want to be able to shelter in place.
Do you have any further questions?
All set, thank you.
Well, great. So press has now had its chance, the CBA's had its chance, and the candidates have had their chance, so that's good. And that gets us to closing statements. So you each have your opportunity to talk to your electorate and ask for votes. And in this case, Donna, I'm going to ask you to start the closings.
I'd like to thank the Chelmsford Business Association for hosting tonight's debate. And I'd like to thank Jamie Outland Brown for participating in so many engaging and meaningful discussions around our school system. I would like to share some of what has been reaffirmed for me in this campaign. Our teachers provide wonderful education opportunities. Our students are determined, resilient, and resourceful. We have students scoring among the highest on MCAS. We have students being accepted into top-tier colleges and universities, learning trade skills, joining the military, and becoming gainfully employed. Our students are excelling and winning awards in music, theater, and art, academics, and athletics. Our students give back to our community through activities such as Seniors Helping Seniors, Project 300, and the Pay It Forward campaign. Students learn that with strong values and Chelmsford pride that they can be successful. As a community, we have many reasons to be proud, but there's still a great deal of work that needs to be done. I believe that with my leadership skills, love of teaching, and the knowledge of the town, I can help solve some of the immediate problems facing the school committee. I am committed to investing my time and energy to develop a long-range vision for the continued success of our school system. My name is Donna Newcomb, and I respectfully ask for your vote on April 3rd for school committee.
Thank you, Donna. Jamie, your opportunity.
I just want to thank the CBA and everyone for coming out, participating, hosting in this event. This is the last debate. You've had an opportunity to hear the candidates' views and positions on the school committee. The final decision is in your hands come April 3rd. What kind of experience and skills do you want in your next school committee member? I'm not trying to be a politician. I want to be a public servant. I'm a new voice with fresh ideas that can provide a wider perspective on current state of the school department. I will bring dignity, strong ethics, and pride to the proverbial working table. My Army career has given me the leadership experience and professionalism necessary to move the school committee forward and to get it focused back on the children and the educational environment. I have the integrity to hold people accountable for their actions, and I have the courage to ask questions and to not just go with the flow. I will also not allow any relationship to compromise the integrity of that position. Make no mistake, I strongly desire and will work tirelessly to be the next public servant for the betterment of our town and of the education of our children. I humbly ask for your vote on April 3rd. Jamie Outland Brown for Chelmsford School Committee.
Before I conclude this evening's program, I remind everybody at home and everybody in the room, please vote. That's the important part, participation. On behalf of everybody here in our community and the Business Association, thank you for participating. Let's give a round of applause. On behalf of the Chelmsford Business Association, that concludes our annual Candidates Night. Thank you for attending, and we hope to be here next year. Thank you.